Alright, I don't really know where else to put this. A friend told me about this place, said you guys were a little more open-minded than most. I need to get this out, to write it all down, because I feel like I'm either going insane or I'm in some kind of serious trouble. Maybe both. It started, or I should say, I first noticed it when I was about 16. We've lived in the same apartment my whole life. An old pre-war building, the kind with thick walls, high ceilings, and a layout that felt like it was designed by someone who hated straight lines. My room was at the end of a long, narrow hallway that branched off from the main living area. It was always the darkest part of the apartment, the part where the overhead light fixture never seemed to be bright enough. At the very end of this hallway, past my bedroom door on the left and a small linen closet on the right, was a solid wall, or what was supposed to be a solid wall. Except for me, it wasn't. For me, there was a door. It wasn't ornate or spooky, it was the opposite, which was almost worse. It was simple, flat-paneled wooden door, painted the same shade of landlord special off-white as everything else. But it was wrong. The frame was just a little too thin, the brass knob a little too tarnished compared to the others. It didn't belong. I knew, with the kind of deep instinctual certainty you can't explain, that if I measured the building's exterior and then my family's apartment, there'd be a chunk of space unaccounted for. A room-sized chunk. The first time I tried to open it, I was just curious. I'd walk down the hall to go to my room and just stop in front of it. My hand reached out, my fingers wrapping around the cool, smooth metal of the knob. It was real. It felt solid under my palm. Before I could turn it, my mom's voice cut through the quiet of the kitchen. "Honey, dinner's almost ready. What are you doing back there?" "Just coming," I called back, my hand still on the knob. I heard her footsteps, the soft shuffle of her slippers on the hardwood floor. She came around the corner and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. It was a look of immense, profound wariness. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice soft. "I was just wondering what was in here," I said, gesturing to the door. "I don't think I've ever seen it open." She blinked slowly. "Seen what open, sweetie?" "This door." She followed my gaze, her eyes landing on the space where my hand was occupying. She looked at me, then at the wall, and then back to me. Her expression was one of pained confusion. "You're standing in front of a wall," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Come on, let's eat. You must be tired." She didn't wait for me to respond. She just turned and walked away. I stood there for a moment, my hand hovering in the air where the knob had been. I looked back. It was still there. The door, the frame, the knob. I could see the faint hairline cracks in the paint. I reached out again and my fingers brushed against the cold textured plaster. The door was gone. There was only a wall. I shook my head, a cold sweat breaking out on my neck. I felt dizzy. I must have imagined it. Stress from school, maybe. I went to the kitchen and ate dinner, and nobody mentioned it. But it kept happening. I'd be walking down the hall, and there it would be. I'd catch a glimpse of it from the corner of my eye, trying to will it to stay, to prove I wasn't losing my mind. But the moment I tried to focus, to really commit to interacting with it, someone would intervene. My younger sister was the most direct. I was standing there one afternoon just looking at it, my heart pounding in my chest. She came barreling down the hallway, phone in hand. "What's your problem?" she asked, not even looking up. "What do you mean?" "You're always doing this. Standing here like a creep staring at the wall. It's weird." "It's not a wall," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's a door." She finally looked up from her screen, an expression of genuine annoyance on her face. "Okay, whatever. You're blocking the hall." She pushed past me, her shoulder bumping mine, and disappeared into her room. I looked back. The door was there, solid and silent. My dad was the worst, though. His reaction wasn't confusion like my mom's or annoyance like my sister. It was a deep, quiet anger, an anger that I felt like it was covering up something else. One night I couldn't sleep. The apartment was silent. Everyone was in bed. I crept out of my room and down the hall. The moonlight from the living room window barely reached back there, casting long, distorted shadows, and in the gloom, the door seemed to be more real than ever. I could almost smell the dust and the stale air that I imagined was behind it. I took a deep breath and reached for the knob. My fingers were an inch away when his voice came from the darkness behind me. Don't. I spun around. My dad was standing at the other end of the hall, just a silhouette against a faint light. I couldn't see his face. I was just... Go back to bed, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, but it carried the weight that made my blood run cold. There's nothing there for you. But I see it, I pleaded, my voice cracking. Dad, there's a door here. There is a wall, he said, and he took a step forward. You're tired. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Go to sleep now. I didn't argue. There was nothing in his tone that told me this was a discussion. I scurried back to my room and lay in my bed, my body trembling. I'd never seen him like that. It wasn't just a father telling his son to go to bed. It felt like a guard warning a prisoner away from the fence. That's when I started hearing the sounds. At first it was so faint I thought it was the pipes or the neighbors upstairs. A soft scratching, like a mouse behind the plaster. But it was always coming from the same spot, from behind the door. Then the scratching became more frantic, more intentional, like fingernails dragging down the wooden surface. I'd lie awake at night, my ear pressed to my own bedroom wall, trying to make sense of it. I told myself it was rats, big ones, but I knew it wasn't. One evening while I was doing homework, I heard it. A voice. It was muffled, indistinct, but it was unmistakably a human. A cry. A short, desperate sob that was cut off abruptly. I shot out of my chair and ran into the hall. The door was there, stark and white under the dim light. I pressed my ear against it, my whole body shaking. Silence. Did you hear that? I yelled, my voice echoing in the apartment. My mom appeared from the living room, a book in her hand. Hear what, honey? You shouted. A cry. It came from in here. I slapped my hand against the flat surface of the door. She sighed, that same look on her face. There's no in here. It's Mr. Henderson's apartment on the other side of that wall. He's a 90-year-old man. Maybe he had the television on. It didn't sound like a TV, I insisted. It sounded like someone was hurt. My dad came down and stood next to her. He looked past me at the wall. His jaw was tight. Knock it off, he said, his voice low. You're scaring your mother. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm telling you what I heard. The sounds became more frequent after that. The pleading was clearer. Help me. A thin, reedy voice that seemed to seep through the wood. Please, it's so dark in here. Sometimes it was a man's voice, sometimes it was a woman's, sometimes it sounded like a child. I was the only one who heard it. I tried to record it on my phone, but all I ever got was static and the low hum of the building. I was becoming a ghost in my own home. I lost weight. I stopped talking at dinner. I spent most of my time in my room with headphones on, trying to block out the whispers from the end of the hall. My family started treating me like I was made of glass. They spoke in soft, placating tones. My mom would leave snacks outside my door. My sister stopped making fun of me and just avoided me. They were walking on eggshells, and it was suffocating. They thought I was going crazy. I was starting to believe them. The breaking point came a few years later when I was home for my first year of college. I thought maybe getting away would have fixed it, that the distance would have reset my brain. But the moment I walked down that hallway, it was there. The door. It was like it had been waiting for me. And that night, the sounds were worse than ever. It wasn't just whispers anymore. It was screaming. A high, thin shriek of pure terror that went on and on. I burst out of my room, my hands covering my ears. "Can't you hear that? For God's sakes, how can you not hear that?" My parents were in the living room watching TV. The sound from the television was completely drowned out by the screaming in my head. My dad stood up, his face pale, and my mom was crying silently. "Make it stop," I begged him, tears streaming down my face. "Dad, please, you have to do something." He walked over to me, his steps heavy. He put his hands on my shoulders, his grip like iron. He looked me straight in the eyes, and his own were filled with a terrible, familiar pain. "Listen to me," he said, his voice ragged. "You have to be strong. You have to ignore it. Just block it out." "I can't. It's so loud." And then he said the words that changed everything. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper, his eyes wild with desperation I'd never seen before. "I know," he gritted out. "It's louder for you than it was for your grandfather." The screaming in my head stopped. The world went silent. "What?" I breathed. He realized what he said. The strength went out of his arms and he stumbled back, his face ashen. I didn't mean." "What did you mean?" I demanded, following him as he backed away. "What was it like for Grandpa?" My mom was openly sobbing now. "Don't," she begged my dad. "Please don't." "Grandpa died of a heart attack," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "That's what you always told me." My dad wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped in defeat. That's the simple version. It was a floodgate opening. I hounded him for days. I refused to let it go. The one sentence had validated my entire experience. I wasn't crazy. This was real. This was something that happened before. Finally, he broke. He led me to the small, dusty storage closet at the back of the apartment, a place filled with old tax records and broken appliances. From the very back, under a pile of moth-eaten blankets, he pulled out a small wooden footlocker. "Your grandmother gave this to me after he died," he said, his voice hollow. "She told me to burn it. I never could." Inside was a collection of my grandfather's things. Old photos, a service medal, and some letters. At the bottom, a thin, leather-bound journal. It belonged to his older brother, my great-uncle, a man that no one ever spoke about. I took the journal to my room and I opened it. The first few pages were dated from just after the Second World War. He wrote about coming home, about trying to find a job, about living with his parents and his younger brother, my grandfather, in this very apartment. His early entries were normal. He talked about the city, about a girl he liked, about his frustration with his family. Then his tone started to shift. He mentioned the hallway. October 12th. There's a strange draft at the end of the hallway, past my brother's room. Mother says it's just an old building settling, but it feels more specific. It's coming from a door I don't remember being there before. It's plain, white. It doesn't seem to lead anywhere according to the building plans Father keeps in his study. My blood turned to ice, and I kept reading. October 29th. I tried to open the door today. My brother stopped me. He laughed and asked why I was trying to walk through a wall. Then, when I looked again, he was right. There was only plaster. But I knew what I saw. I'm not imagining it. He's young and he doesn't pay attention. But I saw it. November 15th. The sounds have started. A scratching. I thought it was a rat, but it's too rhythmic. And last night, a voice. A woman, I think, crying for help. I asked Father if he heard it, and he became enraged. He told me I was not to go down that end of the hallway again. He looked frightened. The entries grew more erratic. His handwritings, once neat and controlled, became a frantic scrawl. He described the same whispers, the same pleas for help. He wrote about his family's denial, their insistence that he was ill, that the war had done something to his mind. December 7th. They think I'm mad. They talk about me when they think I cannot hear. They want to send me away, but I am not mad. There is someone trapped in that room. I hear them every night. They beg me to let them out. How can my own family be so cruel as to leave someone to suffer like that? They're the mad ones, not I. December 21st. It is so loud now. The screaming, it never stops. I cannot eat. I cannot sleep. My brother, my own brother, looks at me with pity. He does not hear. He does not understand. Only I can help them. The knob is so cold, but I know what I must do. The final entry was just a few words, scrawled so hard that the pen had torn the page. December 23rd. I have to let them out. Below that there was a clipping from a newspaper, yellowed and brittle, tucked into the back cover of the journal. It was a short article. It stated that my great-uncle had been committed to the state asylum after a violent psychotic episode in which he had attacked the wall in my family's apartment with a hammer, claiming he was freeing the prisoners. He died in the asylum 30 years later. My hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it. My father was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. My mother was next to him, her arm around his shoulders. They looked at me as I entered. They already knew. It's not a sickness, I said, my voice dead. Is it? My father finally looked at me, his face a mask of grief. No, he said. It's worse. It's a thing, a burden. It attaches to one person in our family, each generation. It seems to choose the sons. It chose my uncle, it chose my father, and now it's chosen you. He told me everything. He said his father, my grandfather, had seen the door too, heard the sounds. But after seeing what happened to his brother, he chose a different path. He spent his entire life ignoring it. He drank heavily. He was a cold, distant man. He lived in a constant state of managed terror, fighting a battle no one else could see. The stress, my dad said, is what really killed him, not a heart attack. A lifetime of listening to screams behind the door had just worn his body out. It's a parasite, my dad whispered, his eyes pleading with me. It feeds on attention. The more you focus on it, the more you listen, the stronger it gets, the louder it gets. Your great-uncle tried to fight it, to open the door, and it consumed him. Your grandfather ignored it, and it poisoned him from the inside out. I've been lucky. It skipped me. I've never seen it, never heard it. All I could do was watch my father suffer and pray that it wouldn't come for my son. He broke down then. A lifetime of fear and guilt pouring out of him. You have to be stronger than them, he sobbed. You have to live your life so fully, so loudly, that you drown it out. You have to forget the hallway even existed. Please. You have to be the one to starve it, to let it die. Just live your life and don't look back. I listened to all of it. I heard his words. I saw his tears. And a part of me, the logical, educated part, rejected it all. A curse? A generational parasite? It sounded like something from a fantasy novel. The more plausible explanation was so much simpler, and in its own way, sadder. My great-uncle had a severe mental illness. The trauma of it created a shared delusion. a piece of family folklore passed down through the fear of suggestion. My grandfather likely had his own struggles, and my dad's anxiety manifested as this protective, frantic denial. And me? I was just the next in line of men with a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia. That's what I chose to believe. It was the only sane option. I told them that I needed to get away, not from them, but from the apartment, from the environment. I needed a fresh start, a place with no history, no dark hallways. My dad argued. He begged me to stay where he could help, but I knew he couldn't. Staying felt like accepting the curse was real. Leaving felt like choosing sanity. I got a good job in a city 1,000 miles away. The move was a blur of boxes and goodbyes. The last time I saw my dad, he hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Be strong," he whispered in my ear. "Don't listen." My new apartment was nothing like the old one. It's a modern high-rise. Clean lines, lots of natural light, brand new everything. For the first 2 months, it was perfect. It was quiet. Blissfully, wonderfully quiet. I slept through the nights for the first time in years. I was starting to feel normal. I was convinced I made the right choice. I had escaped the family madness. Last night, I finished unpacking the last of my boxes. I'd set up my office in the second bedroom. It was late and I was walking from the office to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The main living area is an open plan, but there's a short hallway that leads to the master bedroom and bathroom. It's a small, functional space, a blank canvas. And at the end of it, where there is supposed to be a solid, featureless wall, there is a door. I stopped dead, the empty glass slipping from my hand and shattering on the floor. It's the same door. The exact same one. Plain, flat-paneled, painted a slightly too bright shade of white that doesn't quite match the rest of the trim. The same tarnished brass knob. It wasn't the apartment. It was never the apartment. It's me. I brought it with me. I stood there for what felt like hours, my bare feet just inches from the broken glass, my eyes fixed on the impossible door. My dad's words echoed in my head. It attaches to one person. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my dad. A text message. Just checking in. Everything okay? I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. Slowly, shakily, I took a step forward, and another. The impossible architecture of my personal hell. I could feel a faint, cold draft seeping from under it. My dad begged me to stay strong, to ignore it, to live my life and starve it out. My great-uncle's diary proved the cost of trying to fight it. But they never considered the third option. Not fighting it, not ignoring it, accepting it. I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I pressed my ear to the smooth, cold wood. At first, there was only silence, a deep, profound quiet that was more unnerving than any scream. I held my breath, listening, and then I heard it. A faint scratching. A whisper so close that it felt like it was on the other side of my own skin. "Help me." My father begged me to be strong enough to ignore it. My grandfather was strong enough to ignore it, and it broke him. My great-uncle was strong enough to fight it, and it destroyed him. I don't know if I'm strong. All I know is that for the first time in my life, there's no one here to tell me to stop. When my sister Shelby disappeared, Even when they declared her dead, I knew she was still alive. I could feel it. And I was right. Sort of. And so, here I am, sitting in my car at 2:10 a.m., near a darkened bus stop that probably hasn't seen another visitor in decades, waiting for her, despite being warned of the consequences. I'm writing to distract myself from the nearly overwhelming and increasingly strong prey instinct to run. The urge to put as much distance as possible between myself and what I can only describe as a receding nothingness beyond the tree line. 28 days ago, Shelby was driving through Mayerton, a tiny town I'd never heard of until I got the call from the police, until it became the last place my sister was seen before seemingly falling off the face of the earth. I'm still not sure why Shelby was there in the first place. It was far out of the way from Billings, where she'd been headed, but I suppose that's one more thing that I'll never get the answer to. Not from her, at least. They declared her dead. When the Mayerton police called me, they told me they found her car, that bright red 15 Mini Cooper she loved so much, wrapped around a tree on the side of the road. If she had been in the car when they found it, then maybe I'd have more incline to agree with them. The car was mostly totaled, but what did remain of the interior was immaculate. There was no blood. Her purse and her suitcase were there, keys still in the ignition, and it was locked from the inside. Everything was still in the car. Everything except for my sister. But the local authorities told me she was dead, and despite my pleas for them to look for her, they straight up refused. No need, they said, so it was on me to find her. I was running late on my first visit to Mayerton. A delayed flight and a mix-up with my rental car when I finally landed meant I wasn't approaching the town until it was nearly 12 a.m. To top off an already bad situation, I was lost. My GPS told me to take exit 19C, but I couldn't find it. I'd take several U-turns and loop back a few times, and each time grew more and more frustrated as I'd see 19A, 19B, and then exit 20. It's not like 19C was recently closed either. The guardrails were perfect, seamless, and beyond the highway was nothing but trees and craggy rock. No, it was more like there wasn't an exit 19C, and there never had been. And, to further exasperate my building anxiety, my GPS refused to provide me with an alternate route. As far as Google Maps was concerned, the only way into Mayerton was to take an exit that didn't exist. After 3 more loops around the highway, I finally gave up and stopped at a crappy motel, conveniently located off of 19B. I asked the guy at the desk if he could suggest a way to get to town, since at that point I had no clue how I was supposed to find Mayerton. He looked tired, and not merely 1 a.m. tired. No, he looked exhausted by life tired, and didn't even bother glancing up from his book that he was reading when he dismissively told me, "It'll be back in the morning." The exit. Or the town. He just shrugged. I lost it in that moment. I broke down sobbing on the dingy check-in desk of that seedy motel. He was kind enough to ask if I was okay, and I instantly found myself telling him everything. Why I was headed there, how unhelpful the authorities were, and how I knew the only way I'd find her was if I was searching for her myself. After a brief silence, he quietly confided that he'd also lost someone, his fiancée. She had gone into Mayerton several years ago, and she too had disappeared. Did they ever find her? I asked automatically, even though I was fairly sure I already knew the answer based on the decades worth of misery etched on his face. So it took me by surprise when he nodded. He stared off into space for the longest time before he whispered, "I wish I hadn't." He introduced himself as Gary, and he told me that my sister Shelby was gone, that nothing good could possibly come from me going to look for her. When he couldn't talk me into turning around and going back home, he offered me a room for the night. As he handed me the key, he reluctantly told me that 19C would be back at 2 a.m., but would be gone by 11 p.m. the next day. I knew he was messing with me, that no road would magically appear, so you can imagine my utter shock the next morning when, sure enough, just like Gary had assured me, where before there had been a solid metal guardrail, there was an exit. I'd found 19C. The worn gravel and the peeling paint of the off-ramp seemed to indicate a well-traveled road, too. So I followed the winding one-lane road through the trees, and I was confused, yet relieved when I found my way to Meriton. That relief was short-lived. The police were somehow even more unhelpful in person, insisting Shelby was gone and I should go home and move on. It didn't matter that she'd only been missing a couple days. It didn't matter that there wasn't a body. I wasted hours at the station, changing nothing, convincing no one. The case had been closed, they told me. As far as they were concerned, my sister was dead. Now, based on what I've learned, I almost wish she was. That would have been more merciful. A kindness, even. As I continued my own search for her, the longer I lingered, the more I realized that something was very, very wrong with the town of Meriton. Every single house that wasn't already demolished sat abandoned, the structures slowly being reclaimed by the overgrowing lawns and encroaching woods. The sidewalks were empty of people, and I only saw 2 cars on the road in all the hours I was there. The few businesses that remained open only had a handful of customers inside, and they were clearly not happy to see me there. Every single person I asked told me the same thing. It was eerie, how their responses were so similar, almost word for word as if rehearsed. That they'd never seen my sister before, that there was nothing for me in their town, and I need to leave. And then, with what seemed like a genuine sadness, they were sorry for my loss. Eventually, 10:50 p.m. rolled around and I'd still found nothing. The stores were all closed at 10 p.m. Even those traditionally open for 24 hours elsewhere were closed at 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. I watched the town shut down and watched it empty of people. So frustrated, I pulled my way into one of the many empty parking lots, and I stared at the shadowy expanse of trees where her car had been found. There was a stale and heavy, unnerving silence, thick enough to choke on. It was in that moment, as I sat in the red glow of the shut-down pumps of the only open 19-hour gas station I'd ever seen in my life, that I first picked up on the hint of wrongness in the air. I could suddenly feel that there was something out there beyond my line of sight, something waiting just past the trees, something terrible. I realized that Gary and a handful of people I'd encountered were right. I needed to leave. I had that epiphany a little too late. Because what began to happen next was the cherry on top of my shit Sunday. As I took a final look into the trees, as if they could give me a sign, an answer, a darkness unlike anything else I'd ever witnessed began to seep through them, swallowing them. It choked out the light of the moon. It was like a curtain of nothingness, a presence only detected by the absence of everything it touched. It carried with it the smell of burning meat mingled with rotting fruit and suddenly flooded through my open windows. I found myself frozen as it approached. As it swallowed the houses down the street, I could feel a strong sense of emptiness, one that sucked the air out of my lungs, threatening to crush me. At the same time, it felt right. An extended invitation towards the embrace of nothingness, towards something ancient and insatiable. The encroaching darkness swallowed the crimson glow from the gas station pumps. It was only the realization that the blackness had begun to nullify the light of my headlights that snapped me out of it. I 3-point turned my way the hell out of there, peeling out and pushing 65 down the winding road out of town. In that moment, I was thankful the town was empty of police too, approaching the ramp at 10:59. I didn't understand what was happening at first, why the road I was driving along looked faded. That's when I saw something metal shimmering faintly in the distance. It didn't look solid, as if it wasn't entirely there, so it took me a moment to realize what it was. The guardrail. I tried to swerve and slam on the brakes before I hit it, but I was going almost 90 by that point, and the laws of physics and I had different opinions of what the correct stopping distance would be. I braced for an ending that I wondered if my body would even feel, brain even register, but none came. No, instead the sound of metal on metal my ears were met with an angry honking of the person I cut off, as I messily swerved onto I-15. I was back on the highway, the light of Gary's seedy little motel visible from across the way. I took one last glance at the place where exit 19C had been and once again ceased to be. I didn't know what else to do. I went back to the motel, breathless, describing every moment of my ordeal to Gary. He didn't even look remotely fazed by my story, instead opting to stare into space. I realized that the police were right. She really was gone. She'll be back. Well, part of her will. He finally told me, perhaps in the response to the look of hopelessness that must have been written on my face. 2:30 a.m., 28 days after she first disappeared, at the bus stop off Main Street. Are you sure? That's where they always come back. He smiled sadly before engrossing himself back in his book. That was weeks ago. As of this morning, it's been 28 days since Shelby first disappeared. I touched down in Billings and made a 6-hour drive to the outskirts of Meriton, waiting patiently for the exit to appear. I debated stopping by to see Gary, but decided against it. He'd asked me not to tell him if I chose to go back. He said he didn't want whatever to happen to me on his conscience. But it's 2:29 a.m. now, and here I am anyway. Sitting at the ancient bus stop in an empty city of Meriton, a city that only recently returned to existence, staring into the last of the receding darkness. I can see Shelby in the distance now, pale in the faint moonlight, barefoot, immaculate for someone missing for almost a month and emerging from the woods. I found her. Even from here, I can feel something radiating from her. An emptiness, a yearning hollowness, a hunger for something far more precious than mere flesh and bone. I should be running to embrace her. I should be ecstatic. Instead, I'm frozen, overtaken by another emotion entirely. One that I've never felt before around my sister. Fear. No, not just fear. An overwhelming, suffocating terror. And it's not just that now familiar emptiness that radiates from her the same way it did from the beckoning nothingness when it nearly claimed me last month. It's not even the way her skin seems too tight on her frame, or that she's taller than I remember. No. It's that awful, predatory smile on my sister's face, one I've not seen in all of our 26 years together. She moves as gracefully as she did in life, but in her eyes, I see only death. As I watch the palpable nothingness incarnate that's wrapped in my sister's flesh, that I'm not sure what exactly she wants, what it is that she hungers for. In a way, I wish she hadn't come back. I should have believed those that told me she was gone, because she is. She is utterly devoid of everything that made her my sister. As I fight the urge to run to my car, to leave Meriton before whatever it is that wears my sister's skin like a too-tight suit can reach me, I can't help but replay my final conversation with Gary in my head. So, I'd confirmed, she'll be back in exactly 28 days from when she went missing? He nodded, no longer able to meet my eyes. But I need to warn you. If you thought it was bad when she disappeared, he paused and stared past me into the dark expanse of trees off the highway. It'll be 1,000 times worse when she comes back. I told him I knew I was doing the right thing, that trying to save my sister could never be a mistake. Oh God, she's closer now. I can't tell if she seeks to fill that void by dragging me back with her, or if the hunger is more primal, more literal. All that I know, that the Shelby that disappeared, that I lost, is not the same Shelby I see before me now. I'm frozen to this spot now, as if trapped by her gaze. I'm going to share this while I still can. Maybe I made a mistake after all.